The night before the blind date was one of the nights that seemed too heavy for a woman like Aisha to carry alone. Rain tapped against the thin glass of their small apartment window as if echoing the quiet storm inside her heart. She sat on the worn sofa, staring at the text her cousin had sent her. One name, one time, one location. A man she had never met. A dinner she did not want. A future she had already convinced herself she didn't deserve. Life had not been kind to her. Her husband had abandoned her when their daughter Mehek turned 4, leaving without a reason, without remorse, and without a goodbye. Since then, every day felt like stitching together a life that kept tearing apart. Yet what she didn't know was that the next morning, her little girl would tug her hand with such innocent determination that everything, every fear, every wound, every belief she held about herself, would be forced to change. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that life can turn around in a single unexpected moment, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The morning arrived with sunlight spilling gently across the small kitchen. Aisha moved quietly as she prepared breakfast, still debating whether she should cancel the blind date. She did not want new love. She had no space for disappointment. But Mehek, now 7 years old, had overheard her aunt's message the night before and woke with a sparkle in her eyes. The child was always trying to fix her mother's sadness, believing every problem in the world could be solved with a hug or a hopeful idea. As Aisha placed a piece of toast on the plate, Mehek climbed onto her chair and grabbed her mother's arm with unexpected strength. She insisted they go, not because she wanted her mother to find love, but because she wanted her to smile again, to be seen, to be valued. Aisha tried to resist, but the child's faith was stronger than the woman's fear. Before she realized it, the two of them were choosing a dress, combing hair, tying shoes, and stepping out into a world that Aisha feared would only hurt her again. The restaurant was elegant, too elegant for a woman who had taught herself to shrink, to stay unnoticed. She felt small among polished tables, tall windows, and people dressed in expensive perfumes. Her cousin's friend, a man she barely recognized from the picture, was already seated. Tall, confident, and sharply dressed, he carried an aura of someone important. The moment she saw him, nerves tightened around her like a rope. She held Mehek's hand as tightly as the child held hers. The little girl whispered comforting words only a child could believe, that everything would go well, that her mom was beautiful, that good people existed. But life is always waiting to reveal its own script. Just as Aisha approached the table, someone bumped into her. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a simple dark suit, reached forward to steady her. His eyes were warm and startled at the same time, as though he hadn't planned to be part of anyone's morning. Mehek looked up at him curiously, as children often do when they sense stories hidden behind someone's eyes. The man apologized with polite calmness, and Aisha nodded nervously, stepping away. She didn't want attention, especially not from a stranger. The blind date began awkwardly, with the man across from her listing achievements like bullet points. He spoke about his business, his travels, his ambitions. He didn't ask about her life. He didn't ask about her daughter. He didn't even look at Mehek sitting quietly beside her. Instead, he treated her presence like an inconvenience. Aisha felt herself shrinking further as the minutes passed. The restaurant felt colder, louder, less welcoming. She kept glancing at the door, wishing she had stayed home. She tried to smile for Mehek's sake, but even a child could sense the heaviness. Then, everything changed. As the waiter approached with a tray, Mehek accidentally knocked her glass, which fell and shattered loudly. The sound drew eyes from every direction. Aisha immediately panicked and bent to clean, apologizing repeatedly despite the waiter insisting it was fine. Her blind date frowned with irritation, complaining that she lacked control over her child. Aisha froze, embarrassed and hurt. That was when the same man who had bumped into her earlier stood up from a nearby table. He gently waved the waiter aside, removed his suit jacket, and knelt to help gather the broken glass. But it wasn't the act itself, it was the way he spoke to Aisha, reassuring her without judgment, and the way he spoke to Mehek, reminding her softly that accidents are a part of life and never something to fear. His tone held warmth, respect, and kindness that felt too rare in the world. People watched. Aisha's date sighed in frustration, clearly annoyed by the interruption. But the man on the floor simply smiled up at Mehek in a way that made the child's nervous face melt into a shy grin. When he stood again, Aisha noticed something she had missed earlier, a small girl waiting at his table, sitting patiently with a coloring book. She looked to be around 8 or 9 years old, her hair in a tidy ponytail, her expression gentle yet observant. The man patted her head as though reassuring her everything was okay. That was when Aisha realized he was a single dad. The blind date ended shortly after, not because Aisha wanted it to, but because the man across from her decided they were not a good match. He stood coldly, made a comment that stung more than he intended, and walked out without a backward glance. Aisha sat frozen, blinking away tears while Mehak squeezed her arm as if trying to hold her mother together. She apologized to her daughter for dragging her into such a moment, even though it had been Mehak who dragged her here. But the child looked back at her with eyes full of innocence and faith, telling her the day wasn't ruined, not yet. The single dad from earlier returned to his table, but his eyes kept drifting toward Aisha's corner. He seemed to notice her trembling, the faint hurt she was trying to bury. After a few minutes, he approached gently and asked if she and her daughter would like to join him and his own little girl. Aisha hesitated, fear, habit, and self-doubt pulling her back. But Mehak's eager nod and the kindness radiating from the man convinced her to accept. What followed was nothing short of unexpected magic. As the four of them sat together, the atmosphere shifted into something warm and strangely familiar. The man introduced himself simply, humbly, with no mention of his position as CEO of one of the region's rising companies. He shared small pieces of his life, a journey marked by the passing of his wife, a responsibility he carried alone, and the love he had poured into raising his daughter. His words were soft, sincere, and filled with a depth that soothed Aisha's trembling heart. His daughter, sweet and calm, showed Mehak her drawings, and the two children connected instantly as if they had known each other for years. For the first time in years, Aisha felt seen, not as a single mother struggling to survive, not as a woman abandoned by her past, but as a person worthy of gentleness. She laughed, quietly at first, then fully, the kind of laugh that comes from a healing place. The man watched her with a gaze filled not with judgment, but with admiration. The hours slipped by, and when they finally stood to leave, he asked if he might see them again, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely wanted to. Days turned into weeks, and the connection grew slowly but steadily. He remained patient, giving her space to trust again. The children grew close, sharing school projects, weekend outings, and small joys that made their homes feel fuller. Aisha found herself opening up in ways she had never imagined, rediscovering parts of herself she thought she had lost forever. Near the end of the story, life finally gave Aisha the one thing she had almost stopped believing in, hope. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and golden light filled the park where the two families had met for a picnic, he stood before her, holding her hand the way someone holds a promise. He told her she deserved a love that stayed, a love that protected, uplifted, and honored her struggles, a love that wasn't a second chance, but a new beginning. Aisha felt tears slip down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that life, after all its cruelty, had brought her to a moment she never dared to imagine. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness. Your engagement supports us in creating more stories that inspire and heal. Before the ending, please leave a special comment. I believe in second chances.